date was around 1966, 67. I had moved from Seattle with my wife and two sons to a farm just east of Woodland, Washington. And my dad and his brother had a cattle ranch. And I stayed there for a year. I drove a tractor. It was called an Oliver, very famous old tractor, and plowed the soil and planted seed to raise hay to feed the cattle. And it was one day I was on this tractor, plowing the ground, that all of a sudden a design for a puppet house came into my mind. When I was very young and lived in Seattle, Washington, as a kid I used to put on puppet shows for the kids, so my age. And so don't ask me why this happened, but all of a sudden the plans for a puppet house came into my mind, where there would be two sides hinged together that would open up both sides and then would hook together to form a perfect square house, and then roofs that would come up like a teepee, and then the back side and the front side would also come up. And it was a plan that just came to me, how to make this, and so I went down to the lumber yard without any plans, and bought some wood that I thought would work, and it did. And when I had finished making this puppet house, I had a little small piece of 2x4 left over. So it turned out pretty well. I painted it, I think, a bright lavender and purple, something exciting, you know. I had an upstairs window that would open, be perfect for a hand puppet to come out, and I had a stage on the main part, and yeah, the design was quite nice, I thought, and after it was done, I just put it in the barn. My wife said, "What are you going to do with this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." A year later, I moved to Portland, and through a few very interesting circumstances, I was able to get a building to start a coffee house. And I built the stage, and the owner supplied me with materials from his lumber yard and heat, and it was great. He didn't charge me any rent because the place was filled with old junk, but a few special antiques, and I coaxed a junker to come by and take out all the junk, and I rewarded him with a couple of antique oak tables, and he was happy. So I got this done. But here I had this coffee house. I built a stage, 2x6s, so it's about 6 inches off the ground. And I thought, wow, maybe I can do puppet shows for the kids. I have this puppet house I made, and when I went to put it on the stage, it was perfect. It just cleared by a few inches from the top to the ceiling. So I did puppet shows for the kids. I would have Coltrane and Miles and other great musicians recording in the background as I was doing the puppet shows. So that was a great time for me in Portland. I did that for a couple of years. I know Charlie Hayden came by, Jimmy Witherspoon. There were a lot of guests that would come to Portland to perform at the concert hall, and then afterwards they would come by my place. So my place was open from 2 in the morning till 7. And then that afternoon I would get up and come and do puppet shows for the kids. That was an exciting time, an exciting event in my life. And I met some musicians through that. that gave me exposure to Stan Getz and Joe Henderson and Billy Harper and some other musicians that brought me back to New York. So yeah, just an episode in my life about the time I had a coffee house. It was free for people. They just donated money, and out of that I would buy coffee and food. And a lot of times people would come by and just bring food, bring coffee and things. And it was a nice community. It was a nice time. And all the musicians playing late at night really looked for a place where they could really expand their playing, and no commercialism allowed, and or sport coats or ties. It was a very loose place. It was open to all ages because there was no alcohol being served there. So the name of the coffee house was entitled Selah, S-E-L-A-H, which I discovered was it's the end of the Psalms in the Bible, and a couple of concordances says it means to stop singing and let the musicians play. That's on stringed instruments. And there was an Indian tribe in Oregon with a fish that meant Selah. And as you know, the fish is kind of like the Christian symbol. So it was interesting how everything kind of came together. Everything, you know, it's a long story, much too long to share with all of you now. It would take up too much time. But you know, it's a little interesting story for you to hear, hopefully.